you need to step back for just a second and realize the purpose of an appraisal. Okay? The purpose of an appraisal is collateral protection, security.
Originating from deep inside the Rocky Mountains, transported through the power of the internet, and arriving inside your tiny earbuds. It's the Appraiser Coach Podcast.
Minisode.
Welcome to the program, everybody. Dustin Harris hanging out in the podcast chair. I've got another episode that I want to specifically send out to my realtor friends, my agent friends out there. I want to talk today about PIWs, or property inspection waivers, which is a misnomer, by the way. We'll talk about that and more. But first, I want to pause here and remind you we are sponsored by ANOW software. ANOW, of course, is the software that I use in my appraisal office to take care of working on my business, not in my business. Super, super important. If you're going to be successful in this changing appraisal world, check it out. Go to anow.com. It's anow.com/coach. All right, folks, lots of changes going on in the lending world and with regard to appraisals. Let's just put it out on the table. Let's just make it as clear as can be. Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, and the like have made it very clear they don't like appraisers. Okay, they think appraisers are slow. They think that they slow down the process. One individual referred to us as the speed bump of the lending process. Yes, I take offense to that. I would be an awful big speed bump, by the way. That would be more of a speed mountain, I think you would call it, if I laid down in the street. But nonetheless, I get where they're coming from. I do. I understand it. I don't like it, but I understand it. I think that a lot of things can better be understood if you simply take yourself out of your perspective and put yourself in someone else's, okay? So let's take ourselves out of the perspective and put ourselves in another perspective. For example, let's say I'm a banker. Let's say I'm a loan officer. Let's say my goal, my responsibility to my job is to get loans closed. Okay, I can see from that perspective why appraisers might seem like a speed bump, might seem like a challenge, might seem like somebody in the way of the process. Okay, I get it. However, you need to step back for just a second and realize the purpose of an appraisal. Okay, the purpose of an appraisal is collateral protection, security. If a lender is going to put money out on the table, loaning money, okay, a mortgage, if you will, that individual, that party wants to make damn good ensure that that property is worth at least what they're loaning on. Why? Because they're using that property as collateral. And collateral basically means if the loan defaults, we want something we can rely on to help repay the loan, okay? And that would be a resale of the property that has a default on it, okay? That's the purpose. As a consequence, though we cannot tell what a property is going to be worth in the future, the purpose of an appraisal is to make sure that that property truly is worth what the loan is and then some. As a consequence, the very purpose of an appraisal in the overall scheme, if you will, of getting a loan is we are the only, and I do mean that, only third party that is unbiased in the process. Okay? Everyone else in the process, the buyer, the seller, the buyer's agent, the seller's agent, the loan officer, the processor, I could go on and on. Everybody involved in that transaction has a built-in bias. Nothing wrong with that. Okay, that's not a negative. That just is. It is what it is. Every person involved in that process has skin in the game except the appraiser. The appraiser, if he or she is doing their job properly, is the only unbiased third party. Their job is to, without regard for any other aspect, is to tell the client, which usually is the lender, what the value is, what the property is worth. That's their job. Now, from an agent's perspective, that can be a challenge because let's say you have a willing buyer and a willing seller, and they are ready to put money down. They're ready to move forward. They're ready to buy this property. And let's just get the backstory here for a second. Okay, you have put in a lot of work to find the seller, to put the sign in the front yard, to photograph, to gather information, to get all the documents put together, to get all the signatures you need. You've probably made several trips to the property. You've probably met with the potential sellers several times. Okay, and now you've got a willing buyer who has come along. And the last thing in the world you want to do is to throw all of that information, all that time, all that effort, all that money that you've invested in marketing and advertising this property down the toilet. You've got a willing buyer, a willing seller, and as far as you're concerned, the appraiser just needs to come in at the damn purchase price so you can make this thing work. I get it. I get it. However, I want you to step back for just a second and think about the overall goodness of the process. I want you to think about, just for a second, about the purpose of an appraiser. And then I want to talk to you a little bit about PIWs. I want to pause here first and remind you that we are sponsored by ANOW Software. ANOW, for about the last 3.5 years, is the software that I've been using within my office to be able to work on my business, not always in my business. Every week, I take an opportunity to step back for at least an hour and work on my business. ANOW Software makes it easier. Just this morning, I did this very process. I sat down, and the first thing I did was to pull up ANOW Software and to look where we were for the month. It happens to be the first of the month when I'm recording this. And so we just closed out another month, and it was another record-breaking month. And one of the questions on my mind was, how much of a record-breaking month was it above last month? And so all I did was I pulled up ANOW Software, and I ran the analytics, and it took me a couple of seconds. And within a couple of seconds, I found out that we had an 11% increase last month over the month previous. An 11%. Folks, I could not do that quickly with any other software. ANOW is the software you need to work on your business, not always in your business. It's anow.com/coach. One more time, it's anow.com/coach. All right, folks, we are back. I'm talking mainly to agents today. And by the way, shout out to Terry. Terry's a good friend of mine, a member of my dream team, and he sent this idea in. He said, you ought to do a podcast and direct it toward agents, to real estate agents, and help them to understand why these appraisal waivers or PIWs are not a good thing. Now, let me just step back and help you to understand what's happening here. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, the big players in the mortgage industry world in the United States, has basically said in some limited cases, and by the way, they are very limited, okay? If you look at the rules and regulations that are involved, in some limited cases, a loan can go through without an appraisal. I don't have all of the criteria, but it's basically that property must have been appraised recently for another purpose, possibly. There's data that can be gathered on the home. The market is a stable or increasing market. The credit score of the individual getting a loan has to be a certain amount. There's got to be a lot of T's, and I could be wrong in some of that criteria, but basically there's got to be several T's that need to be crossed, several I's that need to be dotted, and in that case, the buyer can apply for a PIW and possibly get it waived. In other words, they wouldn't have an appraisal done. Folks, and agents, okay? Let me just give a special invitation to each of you to step back and just realize the liability involved in an appraisal waiver. And I'm talking about the liability to you, the agent. What do I mean by that? Let me just throw out a hypothetical here, okay? Completely hypothetical. This is not based in reality at all, but it could be. Let's say that you get a buyer and you bring them to the table, okay, as an agent, and they go through the process. And, that home is listed, let's say, for $300,000. And, maybe the contract is for $298,000. Okay, there's been some negotiation made, $298,000. And let's say that there's a PIW or a property inspection waiver. By the way, as a side note, horrible name for that. Has nothing to do with the inspection. This is an appraisal waiver, plain and simple. They used the term PIW for a while. I think they've kind of gone away from that a little bit because it was misleading. But if you ever hear about a PIW, it means a property inspection waiver, which means an appraisal waiver, okay? Which is what we're talking about today. Let's say that the property is eligible and the buyers go through with a PIW and they don't get an appraisal done, okay? Here's the problem. Let's say that $298,000 purchase price was inaccurate. Okay, let's say that home was actually only worth $250,000. Okay, so you're $48,000 off. The difference between appraisal value and purchase price. Now, again, you didn't get an appraisal done, so you would have no way of knowing that. But let's say something happens after the sale. And let's say it comes to light, for whatever reason, it comes to light that that property was not worth the $298,000 that that buyer paid. I have a feeling that that buyer is not going to be very happy with their agent because they trust the agent to be an advocate for them. They trust the agent to, well, they're their client, right? They trust that that agent knows more about the local real estate market than they do. Otherwise, they could do it on their own, right? Do you not think there's going to be some liability issues there? Here's the encouragement from me to you. And agents, I'm talking to you as my friends. If you run into a situation where there is an appraisal waiver offered on a property, number one, if you have the choice, I would not take it. I don't know how involved the agent or the buyer or the seller can be involved in that process. But if you have any say at all, I would not take it. If for nothing else, CYA on your side. Now, if that PIW is pushed through for whatever reason, maybe that's a lender decision and you don't have much say in it, despite your screaming and yelling and please don't. Let's say that the PIW happens anyway. What's to say that you shouldn't consider the services of a licensed or certified appraiser anyway? No, not for the loan. Just for the peace of mind. Why not consider the services of a licensed or certified appraiser in order to determine an accurate market value for your buyers, even if they have an appraisal waiver? It's going to benefit you. It's going to benefit them. I want you to step back and think about it in this sense. Why is it that you encourage your buyers to get a home inspection? And I know you do. Okay, agents, I know you well. I've got a lot of agent friends. We have lunch. We have coffee in the morning. We talk. And I'm telling you folks that I don't know an agent out there who doesn't encourage, if not in the contract, at least orally, but usually in the contract, encourage their buyers to get a home inspection. Why? Number one, it protects the buyers. And number two, it protects you, the agent. Because if they say no to that, at least you have record that you offered it. And if there is a problem down the road, a leaky roof, for example, that wasn't known, and that seller comes back to you, the agent, and says, why didn't you tell me about the roof? You can easily point back to that contract and say, listen, I didn't know about the roof. If I had, I would have told you. But right here, paragraph 6A, encouraged you to go out and get a home inspection, which would have caught that leaky roof. In other words, it's a liability protection. Agents, I want you to look at the appraisal process the same way. Appraisals are not being done the way that they were in the past. There's PIWs, there's desktops, there's bifurcated hybrid reports. No matter what appraisal is done for the purpose of the loan, I would highly recommend that you encourage your sellers to also spend the very, very small, insignificant amount of money it will take to get a private appraisal on the property, just to be sure. I can tell you that I would do that as a buyer. I don't want to buy something that's not worth what I think I'm paying for it. I don't want to be upside down to begin with. Agents, if for nothing else, to protect yourself, encourage your buyers to get an appraisal, regardless of what Fannie and Freddie do on the loan side. Thank you for joining me today, folks. I want to encourage you to be a part of my All-Star team, which now includes, yes it does, which now includes the monthly interactive meeting. Yes, the All-Star team. There are 2 memberships now on the Appraiser Coach. You're either a member of the All-Star team or the Dream Team. We would love to have you to be a member of either one. Join me by going to theappraisercoach.com/memberships. Again, theappraisercoach.com/memberships.
You've been listening to the Appraiser Coach podcast with Dustin Harris. If you like what you hear, please give us a 5-star rating and post a short review on iTunes. For more in-depth insider information on how you can make more money as a real estate appraiser, visit theappraisercoach.com and sign up for the All-Star team today. Thanks for joining us. And now, get out there and create some value.